For the flag salute tonight, I'm going to ask Richard, who's the president of the student council, and Luke, his brother, who is also on the student council, to lead us in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Sunshine law statement. Mr. Griffin, would you like to read it?
All requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act have been met for this meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Oradell. Notice of this meeting was filed with the Record and Town News, and all persons requesting such notice.
Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Griffin?
Here.
Mr. Odo?
Here.
Mrs. Shapiro? Here. Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Dr. Wesley?
Here.
Mrs. Robinson?
Here. Okay, open to the public for agenda items only. Okay, not seeing anyone. Board president remarks. Dr. Ansel is going to speak briefly on the presentation tonight.
Yes, thank you. At our last meeting, we began a series of updates to the board on the progress that our team is making with our district goals. And we talked a little bit about our technology goal. At tonight's meeting, we're going to be speaking about some updates on progress towards one of our other goals, which is something that you may or may not know much about, which is social and emotional learning. And so our principal, Sposios, and our school counselor, Mrs. Mason, along with a couple of our students, are joining us this evening to provide us with some information about social and emotional learning. So, Sposios.
First of all, happy Valentine's Day. It seemed very appropriate when we spoke as an administrative team about doing these district updates, and we looked at our board meetings and we said, oh, Valentine's Day. Well, assessment and Valentine's Day don't go together. But social and emotional learning and Valentine's Day do, because it's about love. And love, from the heart of OPS, our children, is what every day needs to be about. And every day needs to be about social and emotional learning. So as many of you know, this is the second year of this goal, and the goal specifically being enhancing school climate through the implementation of social-emotional programming for staff and students. And I will be honest, the word programming has always bothered me, because when I think program, I sometimes think of a resource. I think of a box that we're going to put in our classrooms, and teachers are going to put in their closet, and they're going to pull it out when I walk by, but it's not going to become part of the fabric of this community. So this goal is about what are the routines, what are the actions, what are the rituals that are becoming part of Oradell Public School so that the whole child is part of every day at Oradell Public School. So when we looked at that, we thought of it as a multi-pronged approach. We talked about how do we expand our professional toolboxes, how do we use the resources we have. So often we say, okay, what more do we need? Instead of just saying, what do we have and how can we use it? And most importantly, if the goal is truly something we care about, how are we seeing it through our children? So we're going to start with professional development. And I will tell you, this is the area I am most proud of our staff this year. We have truly embraced professional development in the area of social and emotional learning. You cannot teach what you do not understand and what you do not or have not experienced. So we really asked our staff to open up and try some new things. They themselves have worked on how to use understanding your own body and your own physiology when you're feeling different emotions. How do you use breathing to calm down? How do you use mindfulness and math connect? Because they do. The language you use in a math class impacts the mindset that a child brings to mathematics. So through every one of our professional development days, we've offered different classes. We've also made it part of our faculty meetings. We've talked about the circle of control and the circle of concern. It's really important. We're now starting to talk about that with our students. Sometimes we get hung up on everything we want to make better. But you know what? Some of that is out of our circle of control. And we need to focus on what we can change, what we can impact, and leave what's outside, outside. We've talked about a special child activity, especially in the midway part of the year. The midway part of the year for educators, you're feeling a little frustrated. You're feeling like, I want to do so much, and I'm at the 100th day. So we've asked our staff at our last faculty meeting to think about that special child, whether it's their own child, whether it's a niece, a nephew, a student in their class. What is it that you hope for them? And bring that to every day as well. During our last board meeting, we talked about technology. Well, in our staff Google Classroom, we've begun to put articles about social emotional learning, the value of mistakes. In a community that loves being correct and loves perfection, understanding how important mistakes are. PD is no good if it stays on the PD day. So we know our PD is effective if we see it in our classrooms. So we're starting to see glitter jars in our classrooms. Glitter jars are visual reminders of kind of how to calm down. We're starting to see meditation and guided breathing in our classrooms. Now, I know for some people that makes you a little uncomfortable. We're not spending 40 minutes doing yoga in our classroom. We're spending 5 minutes after recess getting ready for the afternoon. And we're really, again, if we're going to be effective, our students need to self-regulate, be able to understand their bodies and their minds and make decisions about how to move forward. So we're talking about that language deliberately in our classrooms. As principal, I know if something's effective if my staff are regularly talking about it. So at our last faculty meeting, one of the activities we did, because there's always a little hidden agenda too, we always like to teach another technology skill. So we used a technology platform called Padlet, and Padlet allows staff to kind of post to a site. It's like a post-it note. And we asked the staff, what are you proud of? And you'll see through their answers, much of it has to do with social emotional learning. I'm proud that I've created an environment in my classroom that my students are willing to take risks and reflect on successes and failures. I am proud that I helped a student who doesn't feel comfortable socially initiate a conversation with a peer. They're paying attention to the social emotional and not just focusing on what's the next academic goal. You'll also see one up there about habits of mind, which is a bit of our next step. So as we work on professional development, which is a resource, our professional development days and how we use them as one of our resources, we also, very luckily, have a school counselor. That's one of our resources. And sometimes the role of an elementary school counselor is a little misunderstood. You know, in college, they help you get into, in high school, they help you get into college. So what does a school counselor do? So Mrs. Mason's going to talk a little bit about that.
Good evening. That's better. Hi, I'm Lena Mason. I'm the school counselor here at LPS. I started last April when Ms. Bieber went on maternity leave, and I've been here since. I graduated with my master's back in 2005. I got my school counselor certificate in 2009, and my license as a professional counselor in New Jersey in 2011. So I was in private practice for a while and pursued school counseling, and now I'm here. My training is in mostly cognitive behavioral therapy from school, and then to get my license, it was mostly in family systems therapy. And so both of those modalities translate well in the school setting. I use them interchangeably, and if you wanted to get into discussion on theory in general, that'll be another night. Anyway, so what is the school counselor's role in enhancing social and emotional learning? Well, social and emotional learning is one of the core domains of the school counselor's role in any school. And I see it personally as my main focus at OPS. The way I explain it to the students is like this. There's, they all have an art teacher who teaches them art, and they have a music teacher who teaches music. So they have a health teacher who teaches them about their physical education and their health. I am the teacher for their feelings. So when their feelings get too big for them and start to take over their behaviors or interfere with their academics, interfere with their personal relationships with their peers or their teachers, then that's where I step in to help them out. And right now we're doing that in 3 main ways. There's meeting individual student needs, meeting the individual classroom needs, and then there's serving the community as a whole. Starting with the individual student needs, there's 2 ways that I've gone about that so far. As there's one-on-one counseling with the students, and there's social skills groups. So the one-on-one counseling happens as a result of an IEP or an INRS meeting where a specific need for a student is discussed and needs to be addressed by someone who can meet with them regularly for a specific period of time. So I'll meet with the student and work on that specific need, developing strategies such as for like a specific coping skill. Or if there's anxiety around a certain situation, we had one student where they had anxiety around changes in the schedule. So if there was a fire drill or if there was an assembly, it threw them off. They had trouble with that transition, so I worked with the child on helping them with that transition. So that's just one example. And then another reason for one-on-one counseling would be crisis support. If there's a risk assessment done in the school or an HIV investigation, often the students will need time one-on-one with the counselor to help them process their experience and work through their emotions, come up with alternative strategies for similar situations going forward. Sometimes there's a need for a referral to outside resources to continue the work that I've done if it looks like it's going to be a long process and not something that they adapt to quickly. Then there's as-needed support, and this is where a lot of my time is spent with conflict resolutions. So if students get into arguments on the playground, or if there's, again, an academic anxiety where there's tests coming up, and so they just need a few sessions with me for strategies. Or if there's home issues, sometimes students come into school and there's things going on in their house that are interfering with their ability to focus in the classroom. So I'll give them a time and a place to come work through that. Strategize about how to stay focused in class for this time period and what to do later when they have a chance to get back to it. So far I've served 80, it says district, that was supposed to be distinct. So I've served 80 distinct students, separate students, 80 different students in a one-on-one setting over 220 separate meetings. So those 80 students need more than one session. And that's as per day 98. So it's been a little more since then. We'll see if it doubles. And then the social skills groups that I run, currently I'm running 10 groups per week. So that's 1 per grade level, 2 for first grade, and then 3 for kindergarten. And that's to address topics such as conversation skills, qualities of a friend, body language, everything that you see listed there. Recent one was the purpose of rules at the kindergarten level, to help them understand why everybody has to adhere to the same rules and why we follow them, safety first and so on. So those one-on-one sessions and the social skills groups take up most of my day. And as you can imagine, so that's a lot of time spent on a limited number of students. I'd like to get to more of the individual classroom needs, where I am presenting information in a proactive way to the students so that they're learning the skills at a time when they're not in crisis or not distressed, and can remember them, maybe to cut down on some of the reactionary needs of my services, and so I can be more proactive in the classrooms. So some of the ones that I did back in the beginning of the year, you see the Stop and Breathe poster, feeling upset. When I introduced myself to all of the classrooms, I talked with them about this one simple coping mechanism of stopping and breathing whenever there was something that was, when their feelings were getting too big. Another lesson that I did was when we installed the buddy bench. I went around to all the classrooms that would be on the playground that uses the buddy bench and explain what it's for and the rules for using it, and talked about inclusivity and friendship, being kind to each other, and so forth. And the cultural lens presentation that I did was actually at the end of last year, and that was in response to an HIV situation. And for that presentation, it was for 5th grade, we talked about the American culture, and primarily individualism versus collectivism, and some of the other different values continuums that most cultures fall onto in some way, shape, or form. And we talked mostly about the American culture, but I think it really opened their eyes to how they've been taught to see the world, and that not everybody sees the world the same way. So students in that class have come back to me and said that it was an eye-opening experience for them, and helped them think and see things differently. But again, speaking individually to classrooms, I did the math, and if I was going to do the same lesson, if it was a 40-minute lesson for every classroom in the whole building, it would take me 7 days of doing just that to get to the whole school with one lesson. So obviously I don't have that kind of time to dedicate to one single lesson when there's other things coming up throughout the day. So one of the ways that I have found to sort of address the whole school and build the community and have a shared common experience that everybody can draw from is to use my bulletin board outside my office. And with that, so I started in, like I said, so the first month I did the classroom Stop and Breathe with my introduction, and then in October I decided to try something different and use my bulletin board. So I focused on the theme of Halloween, which is facing your fears. And I extrapolated from that this polling the audience type bulletin board where they could use the clothespins to vote on which situation is scarier. So each week I had a different combination. And it was quite telling. I think the one that you're looking at up there, it's hard to see, but that one was, which is scarier, taking a test you forgot to prepare for, or walking down a dark hallway? And taking the test won out, which to me was scary, because you're really comparing risking bodily harm, walking down a dark hallway, to failing a test, which is supposed to be scarier, and which one did they go for? Okay, so this is not a scientific survey, obviously. And I ran out of clothespins, and then some kids were just moving the clothespins from one to the other to vote. So we take it with a grain of salt, but still, every time I checked, more clothespins were on the broomstick for being unprepared for a test. So at the end of, and then I had the morning announcements, which really became a key piece of all of my bulletin boards, was having the morning announcements where I talked about how the votes were going and sort of analyzed them for the school and put it out there to help them process what this is supposed to be about. And again, that shared experience, because everybody knows that everyone else is hearing the same thing. So they have that common vocabulary and common experience to talk about these things. So then in November, expanding on the theme of Thanksgiving, I talked about the attitude of gratitude, and the students could deliver turkey grams to each other that, where they thanked each other for a kind act, a kind word, just being a good friend. A lot of the turkey grams went off school premises to, like, one student wrote it to her doctor, to parents, lots of them to siblings within the school and outside the school. That was very successful. They loved that. There were a total of 900 turkey grams that I was aware of that passed through my hands to make sure everybody got one. So Then in December, it was a little tricky with the holidays because there's so many different holidays, but all of them have a theme of gifts. And the students are always focused on what am I going to get for Christmas, for Hanukkah, for Kwanzaa, whatever. What am I going to get? And I wanted them to focus on what they have inside them to give. So we created these gift boxes. So this one was hung up. The classroom, they each did one. I can pass it around. And it asks on each side, it asks for what one of their gifts are. They had to ask their teacher what the teacher thinks their gift is, ask a family member, a parent, what their gift is, and then ask a friend what their gift is, and then on the last side they write down what they think their gift is, and they colored the boxes and constructed them and took them home or displayed them or whatever they wanted to do with that. That was December's program. So in November, was it November? When did we do the PD? That was November, yeah. So in November, when we had the PD day, I did a presentation on cultivating compassion. And one of the programs that came out of that was my January bulletin board about embracing mistakes. I wanted to promote the sense of self-compassion among the students. And so, to combat what everyone does when they make a mistake, the first reaction is, oh my God, I can't believe that I did that, I'm such an idiot. That's how we talk to ourselves, most of us, most of the time. So I wanted to combat that and boost their sense of self-compassion. So with the embracing mistakes, we have chain links, and I have, this one is from a 3rd grade class, and the idea is that it will keep growing, and they will connect around the school so that we can all see that our mistakes connect us. That's one thing that we all have in common is making mistakes. We're all human, all 7 billion of us. So they fill out, I don't even ask for the mistake on there. They just fill out what they learned from their mistake. And then the important and what I think is the most powerful part is that last line that says, I am still. And they have to fill in the blank. I gave some prompts that I am still lovable, I'm still a good friend, I'm still trustworthy, I'm still a good student, I'm still learning. So they can, again, combat that self-talk of I'm such an idiot that we all say. I've done a few for myself, and it really helps. So you might want to try it next time you mess something up. The most current program that I'm doing for February is what I love about myself. And I went around in circles a little bit, talking with people about what to do, what makes me lovable, what I love about myself, the greatest love of all. We didn't know what to call it at first, but I came back to what I love about myself because I didn't want to put conditions on what makes me lovable. If they can't think of something, does that mean they're not lovable? So this is at least creating a mandate that they have to think of something, what I love about myself, and then it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not lovable if they can't think of something. And so the students fill out hearts, and they put them in my mailbox. And that picture is from earlier today, so that's 2 days worth of hearts, and then I have all of these I have to put up if anyone wants to help me after the meeting. You can see what some of the messages are. And some of them are very specific. I'm good at soccer, and some of them are more what I'm hoping to see, like I love that I'm weird, or I'm a good friend, I'm always kind, that kind of stuff. But if sports are important, some of them were specific with their sports in saying that it takes a lot of hard work. And so that's why I love this about myself, and that's certainly more of what I'm looking for. If I had more time, I would take it all down as data and grab it and see what else we can do. But there's more to come. We were talking about Kindness Rocks. We were talking about other programs. I'll have to come up with more themes for April, May, and June going forward, but that's where we're at now. Any questions?
I think many members of this board know that if there's anybody in OPS that's not very good at acknowledging that it's okay to make a mistake, it might be me. And I will tell you, I had one of my mistakes read over the announcements, and I have a fourth grader in the room, so he knows the mistake I made. I was all excited our lunchtime activities program has started. We had games scheduled for fourth grade in MPRB. You need to put games in MPRB before you send 80 children to MPRB. They all sat there and stared at each other and like, what are we supposed to do? It was a bit of a pandemonium moment, but we learned many things. One, we learned we can deal if chaos occurs for 4 minutes. And it was also, I think, very good for this community to see that I, along with the 7 billion people in the world, do make mistakes. And I will tell you that it was pretty powerful for me to hear that read over the announcement, being okay with the fact that the entire community knew that I made a mistake. And what Mrs. Mason did not share is those mistake notices that we read over the announcements for a month ended, and Dr. Ansel knows this because he was repeating along with everyone else with, I learned that I am still a good principal and OPS still loves me. And we all repeated that every day for the person who made the mistake and was brave enough to share. It's pretty empowering to hear 800 people say that about you. So, as much as our school counselor is a testament to what we are doing in our social emotional programming, and hopefully the PD and the pictures that you're seeing are also evidence of what we're doing, we are here for children. And so, as we know, I don't like to do a board presentation without having a child or young man in the room. And so in a moment, I'm going to introduce Richard as our student government president. Some of you might know that I don't like presidents in student government, and we've not had one since I was here. So all of a sudden, I heard through the grapevine, we had a student government president. I'm not a big fan of a president because it becomes a popularity contest in a vote across the school. So I said, well, wait, how did this happen that I missed the whole thing? Well, it turns out that there are 53 members of the student government this year. 6 of them happen to be 6th graders. And those 6 6th graders sat down and decided that if they were going to lead the student government, they better give themselves some officer roles. They decided amongst themselves who would be the president, who would be the vice president, and what their roles would be. Well, that's pretty impressive, because if social emotional learning is working, then we're developing independent thinkers. And our 6th graders showed that. So I'm going to hand over the microphone to Richard, and he's going to tell you what our student government has been up to.
All right. So the first event we had was a pumpkin sale. It was successful with over 500 pumpkins sold. The students were all excited to get the pumpkins, and we were excited to raise the funds necessary for our projects. Frosty's Friends was our first give back. The first student government made signs and distributed canisters for a collection in every classroom. We collected almost $1,300. We used that to purchase gifts and then wrap them to send to children in need in Ottawa. We purchased fabric with the money we raised from the pumpkin sale and made blankets. These blankets were then distributed to a local nursing home and women's shelter. Next, we held an extremely successful pajama bowl. We received over 400 pairs of pajamas and $500 in cash. We used the money to purchase books. Everything will be distributed to children throughout New Jersey by the Pajama Program New Jersey Division. We made and sent cards to the troops and around the country and the world, thanking them for their service. Our next project will be collecting recyclables from the school and reusing them to make useful items. We are also trying to plan a community cleanup day where people are welcome to come and clean parts of the town. Finally, student government helps me to interact and work with other people by coming together to help people in need. Throughout my experience in student government, I have learned that even though we are kids, we can still make a big difference.
is that I have known Richard now since he was in first grade. So that's the benefit of staying in community for a long time. We really get to see kind of the fingerprints of what we've been doing over the years. So hopefully the work that we're doing this year, the work that we did last year with social emotional learning will continue to reap benefits moving forward. At this point, I will ask if you have any questions for any of us.
Mrs. Mason, can I take you home with me? I'm parenting a middle schooler. I love everything that you discussed. Things that you know they deal with here, it continues. It's really a lifelong process. All of it. I have to learn how to, struggle with making a mistake. I love that you're doing this here. I would like to borrow you once in a while.
Good news, Mrs. Shapiro.
I can.
Well, no, but there will be an upcoming Parent Academy. Talking to parents. Well, we need to put it on the calendar outside of all the other night events going on in the next couple of months. But one of the things we're going to be talking about is the language that we're using with students, so parents can continue to use that at home as well. And as an added benefit, we may actually let you make a glitter jar while you're there.
I would love it.
I had a feeling.
That's fantastic. Richard, you rocked that presentation. Thank you so much. I'm really impressed. I would have been so nervous if I was sixth grade. Great job. Thank you.
Now,
How often do they meet?
Student government, because they're so large this year, they're actually two separate meetings. We do one meeting for 5th and 6th graders a month and one meeting for 4th graders a month. Mrs. Cataldo is the student government advisor, and she stopped in today, and she said, what are we going to do next year? Because of our current enrollment stays as it is, our student government will likely go up to over 70 children next year, and we might have to move to 3 days during the month.
Split them up by grade?
We split them up by grade because then what we want to do is we don't want the 4th graders not to have anything to do. It shouldn't be taken over by the older kids. So we split up our projects by the students. So it might be that the 4th graders did blankets, but maybe the 5th graders collected the money for Frosty's Friends.
Do they have a chance to suggest a project?
Oh, the pajama program was their suggestion. It's all up to them because if they're not invested in it, it doesn't happen. Something like Frosty's Friends, which we started last year with the No Place for Hate Committee, they saw it so successful, so they wanted to do that one again. But we've never done the pajama program before, and we've actually never done anything with community cleanup before. So those will be new things, but that came directly from them meeting and brainstorming how they wanted to impact the school community, the local community, and the global community.
Do the lower grades have a president?
The lower grades, we kind of talk in their classrooms, and they sometimes will go into their classrooms and talk about projects, but we only have one president. I don't know if it'll happen next year. I'm going to wait and see how those 6th graders rally and what they decide. Because what I really liked about what they did is it came from them. Student government should come from them. It should come from what they want to do and how they want to lead.